The New Hampshire primary is just 6 days away, and the candidates are putting their noses to the grindstone to take the Granite State. So what does it really mean to win New Hampshire? Well, if history is any indicator, it is very good news for the winner. Since 1972, almost 70% of the time, the winner in New Hampshire gets the party's nomination. The candidate who takes second place also has more than a 30% shot at the ticket. As for third, well, it's just like baseball. Number 3 strikes out. In the last 32 years, no presidential candidate has finished third or worse and gone on to earn his party's nomination. So for more on the upcoming race, let's talk with senior White House correspondent for the Washington Times and Fox News political analyst Bill Sammon and White House correspondent for National Review Byron York. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you.
Let's start with Bill Sammon. In Iowa, the results can not be as significant, but by the time you get to New Hampshire, I guess there's more momentum. Why is it that the winner in New Hampshire has such a good shot?
Well, I mean, I think each of these early contests is very important. I don't think they are necessarily definitive. You know, we all thought up until a couple of weeks ago that Dean was going to crush everybody in Iowa, and then New Hampshire, it's turned into a bit of a muddle. And it's my guess that New Hampshire, instead of adding clarity to the race, will perpetuate that muddle. In other words, we may see another 3 or 4 way close race. And I also I was going through the names of the different candidates. I was trying to figure out who might drop out if they placed badly in New Hampshire. And I couldn't find anybody who would drop out. I mean, Dean says he's going all the way. Edwards is already looking ahead to South Carolina. Kerry, it was once said that if Kerry didn't win New Hampshire, he was done. Well, even if he loses, he did so well in Iowa that he could carry on and right on down the list. So I think we're going to see a long, drawn-out struggle, and I don't think the field gets winnowed yet.
Byron York, let's take a look at the latest poll of New Hampshire. This from the Boston Globe. It shows that Kerry is definitely benefiting from the Iowa win. But look at Edwards there, a distant fourth at 9%. He didn't benefit from that so-called Iowa bounce, even with his surprise second-place win. Why not?
Actually, I would expect that he will benefit just a little bit in the time to come. But Edwards kind of came out of nowhere in Iowa by this whole positive campaign. He was not going to speak ill of his fellow candidates, and I think people are going to want actually more than that. And I think that if you're a Democrat and you're looking for somebody who has experience both in foreign affairs and national affairs, unless you just don't like John Kerry, he would seem to be a more reasonable candidate, it seems to me.
Well, let me just add one thing to that, Patty Ann. The conventional wisdom has always been that either John Kerry or Howard Dean would be the favorite in New Hampshire because they come from neighboring states and people have known them, for 20 years there. I'm not sure that necessarily is going to be the case. I think there's a lot to be said for the sort of fresh face theory in politics. I think people often will look at a fresh face like John Edwards and say, well, he's got a lot going for him. He is positive, and he also is better positioned than these New Englanders to go from New Hampshire to the South. So I would keep my eye on John Edwards. I think he has a lot to offer still.
Yeah, Byron York, donations tend to be reactive. When somebody wins or pulls ahead, all of a sudden their donations follow. And conversely, it could be a downward spiral once a candidate loses. We're seeing right now both Edwards and Kerry raking in the bucks in just the past day since their wins in Iowa. What does this do for the other candidates in terms of fundraising?
Well, it hurts some of the ones who are already having trouble. I mean, it's a big help for Kerry, who actually mortgaged his house to keep his campaign going. I think the issue of Dean is very important here. He already has a ton of money. He still has some people who are giving him money, but I agree with what Bill was saying earlier about they'll all likely move on after New Hampshire on to South Carolina. But New Hampshire could cripple Howard Dean if he's already lost in Iowa. If he does lose in New Hampshire, nobody's giving him much of a chance in South Carolina. So I think he looks very, very weak if he does not win in New Hampshire. So while nobody's going to leave the race, I think they could certainly be crippled.
Byron York and Bill Sammon, thank you both for joining us.
Thank you.
Well, President Bush going on the record himself in his own State of the Union address last night. Commander-in-Chief focused on the accomplishments of his administrations, as you would expect, but also on the challenges that lie ahead. Plus, he's calling himself Comeback Kerry after that stunning win in Iowa. Can the man from Massachusetts also nail New Hampshire? We'll take a look. And the last Democratic debate before the New Hampshire primary is Thursday. Gosh, look at that face. You got to like that guy. That's our own Brit Hume, 8 p.m. He's going to be handling the debate from Fox News headquarters.